Welcome everybody. A slightly impromptu session with one member down, but Andy and Kevin are going to take us through a session on drone photography, I believe, and probably other things to do with drones as well. UAVs. Andy will correct us on all the terminology, and Kevin, but yeah, should be very, very interesting. As previous, please can you your Q&As, you've got a Q&A box, but your questions and we'll do our very best to answer them. And obviously, if you want to talk about bacon, chicken, and beef, by all means, put it in the chat box, and we'll decide whether Andy will disclose his preference towards meat or not.
Well, I think we know that already, don't we?
We do indeed. So, without further ado, Andy, I'll hand over to you, and Kevin. Thank you.
Right. Good evening, everybody. Yes, rather an impromptu session. Primarily, we're going to be talking about our new regional groups that we're in the process of setting up. But before I get onto that, we will talk a little bit about getting started with camera drones from a sort of beginner's perspective, because I am still a beginner when it comes to it. Had my DJI Mini 2 for about 12 months, not much longer than that. So I still consider myself a beginner. I think Kevin's had his a similar length of time, hasn't he, Kevin?
Yeah, just about the same time. We both hit the button at the same time using, obviously, the BMFA Vectis to help our purchase.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yes, yeah. So I shall share my screen. I have got a bit of a presentation. So there we go. So yes, so it's going to be a little bit about aerial photography with the British Drone Flyers regional groups. We'll talk a little bit about getting started with camera drones, things to look for, and a little bit about, just bear with me. Sorry about that, I've got a hooligan with a motorbike outside. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about Article 16 and Cap 722, which is a little bit of the regulations that cover what we do if you're getting started. But I'm not going to go too much in depth on that, especially Cap 722, because it will take all night, to be honest. So keep it as short and brief and just what you need to know. And then we'll move on to talking a little bit about the regional groups. We've got 3 set up so far, what they are, what the aims and objectives are, what we get up to, and how to get involved if you have a mind to. So, getting started with camera drones then. Feel free to ask any questions as we're going along. I'll quite happily take them as we're going along, and I will answer them to the best of my abilities, and I'm sure Kevin will assist. It's a shame Chris can't be with us because he is our real expert. I don't consider myself to be an expert at this, whereas Chris is definitely an expert. So to start off with, you've got to choose the right drone, and you need to consider before you, probably most people will start looking online and start looking at price first. And it's perhaps not the best way of dealing with it. What you need to look at to start off with is, what do you want the drone to do? Are you looking at videos or still photography, or a bit of both? Personally, it's still photography for me that interests me. I've always been interested in photography, probably longer than I've been interested in model flying, which is over 25 years. So, you know, the camera drones was an ideal way of combining both, really, and also give me an excuse to get away from my desk a bit more often and get out into the countryside. So you need to think, if you're primarily looking to shoot video, the high megapixel counts from the camera, which is something most people all look at as the starting point, is perhaps not the most important thing. If you're shooting in 4K video, it's always going to be 3,840 pixels by 2,160 pixels. So it's 8.3 megapixels. I'm going to thank Chris for this information, by the way. I pinched it from him. So, having a 24 or 48 megapixel camera is fairly pointless if you're just shooting video. You might be more interested to see if the camera can shoot more than 30 frames per second at 4K. That will then give you an option for slow motion video, or see if it can actually shoot in true 4K, which is 4096 pixels by 2160 apparently. So the megapixel count, if it's still photography, is the thing to look at. The higher the better. So that's the first thing. What are you wanting to do? The next thing you need to consider is, where are you going to be flying? For me, I quite like architecture of one form or another, especially bridges and viaducts, but also, interesting buildings that you might find in town centres. So that, for me, led me to the DJI Mini 2, because it's under 250 grams. And when we talk a little bit about the regulations about the drones, you'll understand why. And then we get onto the price. The DJI Mini 2 has a Fly More combo. The picture there on your screen, the top left, is the Mini 2. In fact, that is actually my Mini 2. It is around about £500 now, but it's an excellent starter drone. I got it as a starter drone with thoughts that maybe once I've got more into it, 6-8 months down the line, I might get something a little bit bigger. But as of yet, I haven't found anything that I can't do with the Mini 2, so I'll be keeping it for a while longer. The other two drones we've got on there are the Mavic Pro and the Inspire 2, which are bigger, heavier, and more expensive. I know we've seen some of the names we've got on there. We've got a good friend of mine, Adrian Appleyard, who's also a member of our group. He's an expert as well, and you can see he's actually got his hand up at the moment. If you've got a question, Adrian, if you want to type it in the question and answer box, or even some valuable information, because I know you're more of an expert than I am, feel free.
Andy, I've just dropped him a line, because I think he thought you could actually see him and hear him. So we're getting him through.
Yeah, okay, good stuff. Fair enough. Right, so moving on then to a little bit about the regulations. As we perhaps all know, we've got Article 16 as British Drone Flyers or British Model Flyers Association members. And then there's also the open categories of CAP 722. There is also specific categories in CAP 722, but I'm just not going to go there this evening. That's something for Chris to talk about when he's got the chance. So you need to make a decision on whether you're going to be flying under Article 16 or CAP 722. So briefly, Article 16, things you need to be aware of there. It's non-commercial flying only. Separation distances for over 250 gram aircraft is 30 metres from uninvolved persons, and that's reduced to 15 for takeoff and landing. Hopefully this is all familiar with you. That's not horizontal distance, so you can overfly. So it's more of a dome over the uninvolved persons. It's 30 metres from assemblies of people, but there's no overflying of those, so that's more of a cylinder round. Okay, now an assembly of people, in layman's term, is a group of people that can't escape and get out of the way. They don't actually put a count of the number of people involved in an assembly now. Then we get to where you can fly. Under Article 16, again, hopefully you'll all know this, any established model flying club site, any other suitable site which is not a built-up area. So if you're out on the moors and you've got permission, you've no problem flying there. In built-up areas, you are restricted to sites that are substantially for recreational purposes, and you do need to have done a risk assessment. But hopefully we all do a risk assessment before we fly anyway. Even if we're flying model aircraft, we all do the suites risk assessment, hopefully. So for this, these purposes, you just need to write it down a little bit. And then as long as you've done it, you don't need to send it anywhere. You just need to be assured that you've done one. Places you can't fly, again, hopefully you're all familiar with this. Flight restriction zones, that 2.5 nautical mile circle around the runways at airports. Any other restricted airspace. So sometimes that'll be prisons, there could be temporary restrictions in place, so you need to check your NOTAMs. The Altitude Angel drone assist app is the one to use. That will show everything on there that you need to know. You can't fly on public land where there's a bylaw preventing drone flight, or also private land where you haven't got permission, or the flying of drones has specifically been prohibited. Okay, that's all there.
Andy,
yes.
Quick question from Lenny. Do you always need permission to fly if in the countryside?
It's always best to get permission if you can, from the landowner that you're taking off and landing from. If it's open access land, you should be okay. The important thing is that you haven't had permission expressly denied. That's the most important thing on there. Okay. Right, so that's briefly Article 16 and what we've got. We then go on to the CAP 722 open categories. Again, this is going to be brief. There is a lot more to it than this, but this is sort of the basics that you need to know. There's 3 categories, A1, A2, A3. A1 for drones under 250 grams. You can overfly uninvolved people, but not crowds. And there's no specified separation distances. But obviously, same as flying anything, you must not endanger. A2 category, you can fly in built-up areas, but no closer than 50 metres horizontally from uninvolved persons. To fly in the A2 category, though, you do need the A2 CFC, and that's for drones under 2 kilograms. There is a thing termed as legacy drones. So any drones that have been on the market already, you can fly in here, but they are introducing classes of drones, but they haven't even come up with the system of classifying them yet, how they're going to be classified and the body to classify them. That will all come into the A2 in future years. But for the time being, if your drone is under 2 kilograms, you can fly in the A2 category as long as you've passed the A2 certificate of competence.
Andy, sorry, interrupting you again. Sorry, do forgive. John Stuckle, can you please expand on NOTAMs?
A little bit, yeah. NOTAM is a notice to airmen. So wherever, for example, if there's a model flying event on, they will have a NOTAM issued. So where airmen are supposed to check NOTAMs before they go flying, and they know to stay out of the way, essentially. So yeah, it's just notice so everybody knows what's going on.
I think the important thing there is that from our experience, it's obvious they don't always read them. And a NOTAM does not give you the right to fly. You still have to look out for full-size aviation and still need to be careful.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So us as UAV pilots, though, checking for things like NOTAMs is to ensure that we're not going to be encroaching on any full-size aviation that perhaps is taking place lower than normal, things like that. Okay. So yes, the A3 category. This is for drones above 2 kilograms, and you are restricted to not within 150 meters of built-up areas, so residential, commercial. No uninvolved persons within the flight area, and not within 50 meters of uninvolved persons. So those drones over 2 kilograms, there's quite a lot of restrictions on there. That's in the open category. Okay, so you will find a lot of the commercial operators will be using drones heavier than 2 kilograms. I know Chris does, but he has specific authorizations to do this. So just because you see something on TV and you think, oh, that might be unlawful, he's flying where he shouldn't be flying, he may well have a specific authorization to do what they're doing. Okay. So that's sort of a brief guide on the regulations in no great detail, I must admit.
Is there a good app? Is there a good app, Andy, for NOTAMs?
Chris is probably a better man for that, or perhaps even Adrian, if you want to bring Adrian in. In fact, I'm just going to see if Adrian wants to come on to the panel. He'll tell us what he uses, I'm sure. You there, Adrian? Can you hear me?
Unmute. Join
Hi there, Adrian. Good evening.
All right. Am I there?
Yes, I can hear you now, Adrian.
All right. It's a picture rather than my video. All right. With NOTAMs, when as I said, when NOTAMs issued, it's because there's something special going on in the air. What I would say to people is that if you have to fly in that NOTAM area, find out who issued the NOTAM. You will be able to see that on the Drone Assist app, and get permission from that person to fly in that NOTAM area, and then you're covered. If they deny you to fly, don't fly in it. But only fly if you have to fly. As a commercial pilot, we sometimes have to fly when a NOTAM has been issued, but we'll only do that once we get permission from whoever has initiated that NOTAM, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Adrian.
And I said, if you use the Drone Assist app for, to me, I think it should be compulsory. It's voluntary. I'd like to see him make it compulsory, but if you use the Drone Assist app or the Altitude Angel one, it's the same thing anyway, all links together. Then, you know, if there's any NOTAMs issued, you'll see them there, you'll see what's going on. And it's just a good thing to use. I just think they should make it compulsory rather than voluntary. But that's just my personal preference.
It is something I check before I go for a flying session. Yeah.
Can I just jump in there? One thing about the Altitude Angel or that app, very few people seem to use it to log their own flights. I mean, I tend to do in the hope that I might bump into other people or find people who are into drones and photography. But it seems very little used from, a UAV flyer's point of view. It's there for the commercial people, but a lot of ourselves in British drone flyers or wherever, very seldom do I see it used. I don't know whether that's the experience of yourself, Andy, or Adrian. That's what I seem to find.
Yeah, I think there's very few drone flights logged on there at the moment that I see. Adrian probably checks it on a more regular basis than me because he's probably flying a lot more than I am.
We log all our flights on Drone Assist. From a client's point of view, they like to know you've registered your flight with National Air Traffic Services. So we do that, and that forms part of our risk assessment. As a hobbyist, when I'm flying as a hobbyist, do I use Drone Assist? I'll check it to see what's going on. To be honest, I don't always log a flight. I probably should do. I fly down at Pontefract Park. That's Pandas is my local club, and that's already got a NOTAM issued anyway. I think it's just good practice to view it and see who's around, especially if it's an area where it attracts other drone pilots. If people do use it, you can see who's there and possibly even meet up and socialize. You could be literally a field away and not know that somebody's there. But it's good. It's a good way of registering things. I always put my operational authorization number down and my telephone number, and then if people do need to contact me, then they can do so.
Excellent.
And Andy, just before we move on, do fixed-wing drones have the same restrictions? A question from Ian Moore. Good question, that one.
Yes. All small unmanned aircraft have the same restrictions. Yep.
Yeah.
With a few others there, haven't we? Yeah, Brian Sadler is correct. A3 is up to 25 kilograms. Apologies. And there's a few. Somebody was asking about height. Height is for all multi-rotors is 400 feet maximum, unless you've got specific authorization to go higher. But let's see, normal. We've got any others there? And Malcolm is making a point that the CAA controls airspace, and it's only takeoff and landing that any landowner needs to possibly give permission for. That is correct. Of course, we have to maintain our visual line of sight. And personally, I always feel that I want to fly considerately. So, you know, if somebody doesn't want me overflying, I don't particularly want to be overflying, in my view, but that's just my personal view. Now, both Adrian and Kevin mentioned there about the drone assist, and perhaps it could be quite good for helping you to meet other drone flyers, which sort of brings us nicely on to what was supposedly the main topic tonight, the British Drone Flyers regional groups. Hi there, Adrian. Your camera's now on.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Andy.
These came about, one thing I soon realised was that when I went out with my drone, it was very solitary. Which is fine. Sometimes that's a lovely thing to have. You just go off on your own, you find a nice quiet spot and do a little bit of drone photography. However, I think a lot of those solitary drone flyers are missing out on perhaps the best bit that model flying clubs offer, which is the social aspects of it. So I decided that we needed to do something about that. So I spoke to the people in the office and Chris, and we came up with the idea of setting up regional groups, which are essentially affiliated clubs, just like every other model flying club. The main difference is the clubs without a flying site, because the thing with drone photography is you want to get out and about and see different locations. And you can only photograph the view from a single field so many times before you lose interest. So we've made a start on forming the regional groups. The first was the Yorkshire Drone Flyers, which has been going since December now. We also have the Lancashire Drone Flyers, which Kevin is from, and he's one of the administrators. And the Shropshire Drone Flyers, which Chris is administrator of. Myself looking after the Yorkshire Drone Flyers. So essentially they're affiliated clubs, just like any other model flying club, which gives us those benefits. The important ones for us, because what we tend to do is arrange meets at various different locations, and whoever's arranging that meeting, the insurance will extend to cover them if a claim is made against them for whatever reason. And it also allows us to extend the insurance to non-members for their first visits. I've had a number of people come along to the Yorkshire Drone Flyers who've never flown before a drone. They're very interested in getting involved. And I'll quite happily let them have a go on my Mini too. The flying is relatively straightforward, although to fly them very, very well does take a lot of practice because of the very fine control you need to get, especially if you're doing video, which is another reason why I tend to like still photography, because you can just put it to the place you want it and then take your picture. So the objectives of our groups. Let's move the slide on. Yeah, essentially very similar to the British Drone Flyers as a whole. It's there to promote lawful, safe and considerate drone flying, but on a more local level, and it, put us in a position where we can provide mentors for those new to drones on a local level. We arrange meetups for members to share experience, assist each other, and enjoy the banter and the social side that goes along with having a club of people of like-minded activity. The membership of the regional groups is completely free for all British Drone Flyers and BMFA members. So anyone out there who has a drone, by all means, look for your local group and get started that way. So the activities we've been doing in the past 6 months since we've been going, all pictures in these next few slides have been taken by me, and all with my DJI Mini 2. So you can see the sort of things you can do with it, and the sort of activities we've been getting up to. So we had a recent one here in Yorkshire where we visited the pithead at Barnsley Main, where Adrian here kindly did us a little bit of a demonstration of light painting once it got dark as well. There was a heritage group at Barnsley Main who look after the site. They're a group of volunteers. They've just been given a Queen's Award, actually, which is equivalent to, I think, an MBE for groups of volunteers. And they kindly opened up the car park for us one evening, and they turned up with a camper van, made us all bacon butties and hot drinks, which was very much appreciated. And we did some aerial photography around the pithead there. We had about 8 or 9 members turn up, but also quite a lot of members of the heritage group turned up to have a look and see and learn about flying drones. And all in all, we had a fantastic evening. And so Adrian very kindly demonstrated the light painting, which I believe that was the Mavic Pro, Adrian, with the light on.
Yeah, Mavic Pro 2 with 2 Loom cubes on.
Yes.
So I've been doing. I mean, I've come from a photographic background and video background and a modelling background, and I've been working with a group of photographers from Kippax, my local village, who are very, although they're amateurs, they're very professional. So I've been going out with them and lighting up sculptures and statues and buildings and all sorts of things, and letting them do time-lapse photography at night. And they've produced some really fantastic results from that, you know. So I went to the Barnsley pithead and did the same thing there. And to be honest, the photograph I took, time-lapse photograph, it wasn't that good. Others took a lot better photograph than me, but it was the technical ability to light up the sky and light up the actual building, so that a time-lapse photograph, you got sufficient light to take a time-lapse photograph in what is a totally dark situation. But I think it worked well, Andy.
I think it did. The bottom right-hand picture there was one that I took. That was taken with my ordinary SLR camera. It was actually quite light, I think I recall. So I was struggling to have a long enough exposure, which is why we haven't got a complete circle above that one. It was as long as I could get. But it was a very interesting evening, and as I think everybody enjoyed it, and the members of the heritage group enjoyed it as well. So that's one of the ones that we've had. Our very first regional group meeting took place at Castle Hill near Huddersfield, primarily because it's only a few miles from me. So I knew the area. I knew we'd got good car parking, and most importantly, for any meet that you do, you need to know where you can get decent coffee and cakes afterwards, as you can see. And they are literally the best donuts you're ever going to come across, and you don't need to eat again if you go to the Coffee Boy Coffee House in Huddersfield. So that was our first one, which we had just before Christmas. It was. We were very fortunate. We got there, it was a bit grey, it was a bit damp, it was threatening to rain, but after we'd been there half an hour, the skies cleared, and we managed to get some decent drone photographs. Again, all those, apart from the 2 on the ground, the 2 off Castle Hill itself were both taken with my Mini 2. The top one is the 180-degree panorama. It's one of the sort of pre-programmed panoramas on the Mini 2. And the bottom right hand is the wide angle panorama, which effectively is 9 photographs that the app stitches all together for you. And it's perhaps the type of photograph I take more than anything else. I do like that wide angle look to them. So that was Castle. We've actually had 2 meetings there now. We did a very impromptu one because I was contacted by two people fairly local who'd never flown drones before and were interested in having a look. So we did organise a second meet there, and they came along, they had a go, and they're now proud drone owners and member of the group.
I also, Andy, I also let, I think it was Hank who had a go with me in Spire 2.
Yes, yeah.
You know, he did a bit, because we fly it with a 2-person crew. I got him operating the camera, so we got some nice video shots. And then he was competent in flying drones. So I handed over me Inspire 2 to him to let him have that, a fly around with that. And I did the camera controls. So that was, you know, and I don't mind doing that as long as I'm comfortable. People don't do something silly. It gives them a chance to fly something a little bit different, a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier. Well, a lot heavier, actually. But I think he enjoyed it. Did Hank?
He certainly did, and I think everybody who's been along has enjoyed all the meetings, but the opportunity to perhaps have a go with a drone if you've never had a go, and just, I find, you know, it's very useful having Adrian, who's an expert. It's very good to have somebody's brains to pick. And that it's a very good thing if anybody out there hasn't got a drone yet but is interested and ends up getting one. If you can find somebody who's a bit of experience with them to stand next to you for your first flights, it makes an awful lot of difference. I had my first flights with Chris stood next to me, and after 10 minutes I was fairly confident in all. Well, the flying is relatively straightforward, but I was also confident in all the video features and the photography features that are built into them as well. So it's definitely worth doing that.
Andy, while you're
yes, Mark.
Just while you're on that, there was, just before we move on, you're probably covering this at the end, but a couple of people have asked, which is part and parcel of why we're running this tonight, is there a drone group in Derbyshire? Any plans for East Anglia? Now, obviously, one of the things is about getting a group of volunteers together and setting up your own group, isn't it?
Essentially, yeah, we'll be coming on to that in a short while.
Okay.
But the answers are yes and yes, or yes, we are hoping to. So I will be coming on to that. I'll just cover a couple more of the meets that we've had. We're very blessed in Yorkshire. We have lots and lots of viaducts, and they're all fantastic structures. I have a bit of a viaduct fetish, I have to be honest. And one of them, Ribble Head. You know, it's a fantastic bit of engineering in a fantastic location, and very fortunately, quite often there's fantastic steam trains coming across it. So we had a meeting a few weeks ago to catch the first steam train crossing of the year.
Evening, Chris.
Head. Yeah, evening, Chris.
Evening,
Hi,
Chris.
Still packing up my bag for today's filming, but I thought I'd tune in.
Okay, we'll certainly be having further meets at Ribble Head over the coming months to coincide with the steam train crossings, especially now that we've figured out the best place to be for the crossing. So this was our first visit. Again, there we've got the 180-degree panorama at the top. Bottom left corner is my best picture of the steam train crossing. The best one that was taken while we were there, I think, was Kevin. He took a fantastic one. He just seemed to have got the right angle and everything. He was at the other side of the viaduct, was Kevin. He was on the Lancashire side, I think.
On the best.
He didn't want to come too far into Yorkshire, did he?
No, I've got to be careful.
Yeah. The middle one at the bottom is, Chris will confirm this, I quite like these mini world effect things that you get. And the DJI drones have this 360-degree panorama feature. And effectively it takes 26 pictures and then stitches them all together in one of these mini worlds, which I just like the effect. I find them quite artistic. Everybody else will probably get fed up of them before I do. And then the bottom right, again, it was taken with a drone and a little bit of working Lightroom, which I am gradually getting to grips with. Just converted it into a black and white image with a bit of vignetting on there. So that was Ribble Head. And then just the final meet that I want to talk about is the inaugural meet for the Lancashire Drone Flyers. So we set up and arranged all to meet up at the Singing Ringing Tree Panopticon near Burnley. Yeah, but you'll notice it's missing on there. That's not the Singing Ringing Tree. And the reason being, we found out about 8 hours before the road up to it was closed, and we couldn't get to it. So we had a change. Apparently in Lancashire, it's a thing to put strange structures on top of hills. So we went to, I think there's 4 panopticons, isn't there, Kevin?
There's either 4 or 5. This one is located at Laneshaw Bridge, which again is very close to our Yorkshire friends. But I think the good thing about it is that any of these meetings are open to anybody in the groups. If you're there on holiday or you're working close by, register to the group and come along.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
so,
I'm sorry, guys. I ducked out of that. I'd have gone to the Singing Tree because that really interested me. But
we will be doing one there, definitely, once we have the roads back open. So we went to the Atom instead, which was it was good. There was a good turnout for the first meeting. It was good to meet new people. It was phenomenally windy, and we were all thinking, oh God, we're not going to be able to fly, but at least we can meet up, chat, have a bit of banter. But gradually we sort of gave it a go. And I think we were all flying Mini 2s apart from one person who had the new Mini 3, but we were all flying under 250 gram drones, and they handled the conditions much better than I was expecting, I have to be honest. I think I only got 1 wind warning from the drone. And at one point, I mean, it must have been, it was sat there stationary, but perhaps at a 15-degree angle to hold its position with the wind. But they did handle it very, very well. So that was the first meeting of the Lancashire Drone Flyers. And we're looking forward to many more. We have called a truce, haven't we, Lancashire and Yorkshire, and we're all going to go to each other's meets wherever we can and just enjoy a bit of friendly banter.
One has to be aware of the banter and enjoy the banter, and it is good banter as well.
Yeah,
we've also found a nice coffee shop, which I'm sure we'll be hoping to use maybe on one of our other planned visits once we go ahead with that.
An essential element, definitely. Right, so there's a few there asking about the getting involved. So what we would like to do is have a group in every county of the country. So that requires us to need people or to find people that would happily help with the administration. Get started by organising group meets and encouraging other members of the group to organise meets, because it's useful if the meet organiser is familiar with the site. At the moment, every visit we've had in Yorkshire, I've been and checked the site out in advance, make sure that there's reasonable parking nearby, or find out what the access is like. Because we do have some members of the group that are less mobile than the others, and I think it's only fair that we try and cater for as many people as possible. And if access is difficult, we let people know. We don't want people turning up and then can't get to where we're going because of the access. Organise meets and encourage others to organise the meets. And looking after the social media side, but with help from myself and Chris. We're not dropping anybody in it to say, right, you're on your own. So every group, as it's set up, will get a website. If you go to yorkshire-droneflyers.org, you will see what the websites look like. They'll also have a Facebook page and a group, which is good for we use the group for arranging more impromptu things, but any meets arranged in advance, we put a booking form on the website, so we know who's coming, because it is weather dependent, and if you've got a last minute cancellation, we want to be able to get in touch with everybody to let them know. So if you can help, if you'd like to, perhaps be the lead member to start off with it in your county, get in touch with us, and we can get the ball rolling. We do have a number of members are asking, and I can see in here we've got people asking if there's groups near them. What I will do, I'll email everybody with a form. In fact, I'll put it in the chat a little bit later. We have a form where you can express an interest in joining a regional group, and when we get enough interest per county, we'll get it all set up for you. Okay.
Andy, how many groups do we have at the moment?
We've got 3 up and running at the moment, but we do have a number of people dotted around the country wanting to make a start with local groups to them. But obviously, we need some people to step forward and say, yes, I'm happy to be sort of, take the lead and help get them established. But you certainly won't be on your own, because we've sort of already set up really with the social media side and the websites just to get them running really quickly. Okay.
Yeah, one thing we did want to do, and this might inspire some of the other groups when they get on board, we were looking at competitions, I don't know, per month or whatever we decide to do per meet. We all share the best of our photographs, and I think it would be nice to have, some sort of, images that have been taken, put them on as being the group banner, if you will, for each meeting, and give a bit of incentive to people to post what they've done. It's all right taking these pictures, but it's even better if you can share them with other members of the group, hence the Facebook groups.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's so the primary purpose was always to sort of increase interaction between drone flyers and get that social element going. I'm just going to put a link in the chat box now, which will be to the page on the British Drone Flyers website. And if you want to complete that, if you're interested in either joining a group, starting a group, and we'll be in touch and we'll see what we can do. So, right, what questions have we got there? Let's get through some of those. Right, so what have we got on there?
Right. Yeah, I mean, again, I think most of the questions, Andy, are to do with the location. Do groups need to be located on a county basis, e.g. anything in the East or West Midlands was a question. I think your idea was to set them up regionally to start with, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it was, we thought on a county basis was a way forward, but there's no reason why it couldn't be East Midlands Drone Flyers or West Midlands Drone Flyers. A lot depend on the counties, really. I mean, Yorkshire's quite a big county. Some of the other counties. Yeah, exactly. So it's quite a big area. So we may find in a couple of years' time it's the North Yorkshire Drone Flyers, or we have subgroups within the group, sort of thing. But I mean, I'm quite happy to travel for a day out. We've had, well, as you can see from the picture there, that's Saltburn Pier. So that's almost as far north in Yorkshire as you can go before you leave Yorkshire. More than happy to travel up there. It was a 2-hour drive, but there's excellent fish and chips at the end of the pier. And it was a very good spot to get the drone out and get sort of a picture that you can't really get any other way. So, yeah, so, we will adapt. I mean, it's still something that's in its infancy. And we will adapt as we go along, which is always the best way of doing these things, in my view.
And Andy, have a look at the question from Malcolm Brown. You'll be able to answer that one fairly straightforward, I would think, but it's a sort of very general one. So,
I've always looked into arranging permission where possible for the meets that we've had. Some that I know, for example, Castle Hill, I know you're allowed to fly drones there. There's nothing preventing you. There's no bylaws. It's council land. There's no bylaws preventing you. The meeting we had at Barnsley Pithead, I spoke to the heritage group. They were very, very welcoming. They keep asking me when we're going back, actually. You know, but you can check, for example, Ribblehead Viaduct, the land around there's open access, so it's not so much of an issue. But I've made approaches to Nostell Priory. I'm in communication with them, which is a National Trust site, who have a normal no drones policy, but as an organised group with a full risk assessment in place, I'm hoping that they will be amenable to us having a session there. A lot of the places in the countryside, it's just very, very difficult. So you need to look for signs. And as long as your permission hasn't been expressly denied, you should be okay. Okay, but if somebody comes along and has a problem and they ask you to stop, stop.
Andy, a really great question from Tom Howden. Is there a list of available or of recommended flying spots? I found some online, but not many are up to date. I mean, that is something that we could actually set up a link on our site that people could actually advise of their spots and
Yes. My only slight concern would be keeping something like that up to date. And we are relying on people putting accurate information on there. In some respects, I feel you're better off satisfying yourself that you're flying somewhere where you're permitted. So it's one of those double-edged swords, is that.
One way forward with that might be through the groups to suggest the area. We can check it out, we can make sure it is, and add it to our list of places to go.
Yeah, I think it would be. Personally, I think it's a good idea, because sometimes you think, well, you want to go and do something just to see everybody likes a certain location. You know, as long as it's not overused and causes a problem. But yeah, I can see that. I can see the issues, but I can also see more positives, I think, on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few websites out there already doing that sort of thing. As I say, I think the caveat has to be you need to satisfy yourself rather than just take the word of something from the internet, to be honest. That's just my feeling.
Yeah. Fred Kaz asks a question: these meeting places, are they open to members anytime if you're in the area? The reason for asking is permission given just for the club meets.
That's going to vary depending on the location. Some of the places, you know, they're open to the public anyway. For example, the Atom that I know Fred came up to last week. There's nothing to stop you going there at any time and flying. Just do it with consideration and you'll be fine. But you know, we will be having meets in various places that have arranged specifically with the venue holders. You know, as I say, if Nostell Priory come back and agree to what I'm asking, that will only be for a specific organised meet, because you know that's just the way it is. So it will vary location to location, but as I say, you know, places like the Atom, Panopticon, Castle Hill, you can go along there anytime you like, but just fly safely, lawfully, and considerately.
Andy, all I would say to people is, if you find a place that you'd like to fly and you believe that you're not doing anything wrong, then fly. If you do get approached by somebody who's official and they're saying you shouldn't fly here, be polite, be helpful, ask them for information why they believe that you shouldn't be flying. If they can show that and there's enough evidence there, then fine. Just say, yeah, I'm sorry about that. I didn't know about that. Thank you for educating me and letting me know, and then just land and move on somewhere else. If it's a member of the public who just believes that you shouldn't be flying a drone because they hate drones and they're all from, you know, they're all devil flyers and things like that, then
one of the devil.
try and reason with them the best you can. You can't win every discussion. Don't make it an argument. Don't turn it into an argument. Friendly, open discussion, and it usually, it usually works. I've never had any real problems where I've been flying as a hobbyist and as a commercial operator as well. But be sensible with it and be polite and try and include them. Let them know what you're doing and include them in what you're doing, and that usually works.
Exactly. I let them see the screen and let them see what I'm seeing, and that takes a lot of the fears away.
It does. It does. Yes.
I've only ever had positive interactions with members of the public when I've been out with my drone, wherever it's been, whether it's in the middle of nowhere on the moors or on one occasion. The first time I flew in a built-up area was at the waterfront at Liverpool. And my heart was pounding because obviously I've been flown model aircraft for 25 years in a field in the middle of nowhere. To suddenly be flying, ultimately what is a model aircraft, I suppose, so on the waterfront there at Liverpool, taking the picture of the liver birds that everybody has to do if you go to Liverpool with your drone. It's the law, apparently. I don't know whether that's in Cap 722, but it is the law. You have to photograph a liver bird if you go to Liverpool.
If it's not in Cap 722, it should be.
Yeah. So that was my first flight in a built-up area. My heart was pumping. As I say, my butt was puckered, shall we say? But you sort of get used to that. I must admit, and it's something I tell most people when they start to talk to me about it, is the thing I found most difficult to get used to was trusting the technology. Just thinking, right, if I get into a little bother, I can just let go of the sticks and my drone will just sit there and wait for me to catch up. And the return to home just works. But when you flow model aircraft, where if you let go of the sticks, you're going to crash fairly shortly afterwards. Trusting the technology takes a bit of getting used to. But once you do that, you find that your flying is a lot more relaxed. Later that same day when we were in Liverpool, I went back at night time, put a strobe on my drone and took some night shots of the liver birds as well. So that got my heart pumping again and everything else. But now it's almost, it's a relaxing thing to do.
Andy, I'd also say that try different things with your drone settings. So change your geofencing distances, make it shorter and fly into it and just see what your drone does when you hit that geofencing. Reduce your height down and fly beyond that, and so push your drone into its extreme parameters after you've changed the parameters. And once you've done that, if you experience it, you'll be comfortable with it when it does happen unexpectedly. So try things,
Adrian, you're so right.
Different.
Yeah,
Adrian, you're so right. I mean, I'm a rank amateur, as Andy will tell you. Andy introduced me to it, and the first time I pressed the home button, I mean, I always landed them. I just didn't feel the need to press. The first time I did that, I forgot that the fence was something about like 100 meters up, and this thing just pinged itself up into the air. And eventually landed. I just thought I'd lost it. I thought that was the end of it.
Yeah.
And but you're quite right. If you set it, and that's what I actually did. I set it to quite close parameters, and then actually tested it. And
no, that's good. Is that
I got called away again.
Yeah, we tend to, we change our parameters from most flights we do. So we look at the area, the situation, and if I'm not going to fly at 500 meters away and it's only going to be 100 meters, I'll probably set my geofencing to 150 meters. If I'm not going above 100 feet, I'll set it to maybe 120 feet or something like that. So don't just leave the settings and then never look at them again. Think about your environment and put the geofencing, set it so that it helps you. So if you do get something wrong, a Mini 2 at 500 meters, you're not going to see it. So don't set your geofencing at 500 meters because you're not going to see it, you know.
I think
Lenny, I'm going to say there's a question there. Lenny's asking if we can explain a little bit more about the geofencing. There's a couple of settings that you can set. I'm primarily going to be talking about the DJI and the Mini 2, but it'll be pretty much across the DJI range and most others.
It will be.
You can set the maximum distance from the home point that the drone will fly, and obviously you can set the maximum height it can fly at. So I'm uncomfortable with the Mini 2 more than 300 meters away from me. I can see it, but you can lose it fairly quickly beyond that, especially if you're glancing down at your screen to make sure you've got the image composed correctly, and then looking back up, it soon disappear. So I have it set to 300 meters. And then obviously we're restricted to the 120 meters high anyway, so it's set at that. So I think that's primarily what we mean by geofencing settings that we can change. Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, I chip in with something that's worth mentioning to people in terms of geofencing and smart drone technology. If you're someone that likes to fly a little bit further than maybe you should, there's people out there that do go and fly to like 500 meters plus away from themselves. Your drone is likely tracking that. So if you do have an accident and your equipment is recovered by the Civil Aviation Authority or the police, just bear in mind that you have provided them with evidence of law breakage. So, you know, the best advice, if you want to fly 700 meters away, go at least 500 meters towards it first.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I mean, for a lot of the images I've taken, the flying bit has involved pretty much flying vertically up to the height I want, taking the picture and coming back down. And that's primarily because I've walked to as close to the point where I'll be taking the picture as possible. Obviously, that's not always possible. If we go back to the previous picture, that one I didn't walk to the point of takeoff and go vertically up because I'd have got rather wet. But if I can, I always will. So it's straight up the picture and straight back down often.
I think one of the most important settings, which nobody really has mentioned, is certainly the return to home altitude, and you should set that according to where you are at each flight. If you don't do that, you may well find yourself in a bit of a problem. Please make that as one of your pre-flight checks before you go. Make sure that is set to an altitude safe for your environment.
Good point.
Yeah. No, it is. For those that aren't aware, on the return to home functions, if your drone loses contact with your transmitter, first of all, it loiters momentarily, and then it will fly to whatever height you've set the return to home altitude to be. So if you're flying and you're overflying a building, for example, with the Mini 2, and you're actually at the far side of the building, you can see it because your drone is, shall we say, 100 meters in the air. The building's 60 meters tall, so you've still got visual line of sight. You then lose radio signal. It goes to return to home mode, and you've got your return to home altitude set to 40 meters. It's going to descend to below the height of the building. And then you'll have a problem when it tries to return to home. And the Mini 2 doesn't have collision avoidance. Talking of collision avoidance, I know Adrian said we should try pushing the envelope and changing the envelope every now and then. A good friend of mine I'm just checking to make sure he's not on before, I won't name him though. He has or had a Hubsan drone, which has collision avoidance facility. No, we're not talking about John. This is somebody else. And he thought he'd like to try out his collision avoidance sensors, and so flew towards his house, only to find that the collision avoidance didn't work very well when he collided into his house. So while these things might be in there, it's perhaps not worth trying them out. So don't push the envelope that way. So
talking about trying things out, Andy, Barry Gregory, he put a question up a little while ago about National Trust properties. Does their general ban on drone flies apply to National Trust owned land, which is not part of the property? So presumably some stately home there.
Yeah, it's just a general ban on taking off and landing on National Trust property. Again, overflight isn't in their control. You do have to maintain line of sight. So if some of these properties, you're not going to be able to get there and maintain line of sight. Yes, it does apply to land as well. You do need to be a little bit careful with a lot of National Trust land that isn't particularly attached to a property, because quite often you might find it's a triple SI. And if you start disturbing certain wildlife, you could find yourself landed with quite a large fine, peregrine falcons and things like that. I'd love to go fly at Malham Cove. You'd get some stunning photographs there, but there's peregrines that nest there. And if you start disturbing them, you will get into bother. So I haven't. Simple as that.
Yeah. James has a question, which I think for Chris. Sorry, Chris. I know you're deep into something there, setting up. For the payload challenge tomorrow, what time does it start?
Tomorrow, the safety briefing, I believe, is 10 a.m.
10 a.m. Right. So anybody who's near Buckminster tomorrow, you're more than welcome to go and have a look and watch the payload challenge continue.
I think. How are we doing for questions?
We are through them, apart from one that's just popped up. Brian Sadler in Norfolk, the NT are particularly draconian. They own a lot of the coastline in North Norfolk.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but as I say, perhaps we do have contacts in the National Trust, and we are in communication with them about this. And various other model flying issues as well. And I'm not going to say anything too out of order for saying we've got a constructive relationship with them, and there is potential for flying at some National Trust sites, subject to local arrangements. I think that's an accurate thing to say.
Absolutely.
I did see one from Fred about the police.
He mentioned about it was a statement really that flying in city centres, you're often the police can be involved, and so it's just being polite again. It's just communicating.
It is, and make sure you're flying lawfully. Yeah. That's the important thing. If you're flying lawfully, you're not really going to have any issues. If you're flying over a crowd of people, or you're flying a 2-kilogram drone 10 meters from people, you're going to have trouble, and rightly so. It's about being lawful, being safe, being considerate, and then you're not going to have any issues.
I think just to add to that, because I do a lot of filming with my commercial stuff in town centres, one of the things that the police are kind of quite keen on is that beyond the drone rules, there are other rules and regulations that they have to enforce as well. So you might have a local bylaw saying no flying, for example, and stuff like that. But just going around London, you've got Hyde Park, which is a restricted airspace. And it's not just because they don't want you to fly in the park. It's because you've got diplomatic embassies, you've got the Royal Palace, you've got things that are sensitive. So it's like Andy said about the SSSI and some of the National Trust sites. Some of the places in town centres, they're actually quite sensitive. And flying isn't just breaking, it's not just a risk of breaking a law. You could actually trigger a terrorist threat, especially in London, for example. The police are very hot on drones in London. And that's why, whenever we're flying, we do get stopped by the police, and they always want to see our permits and that we're flying as we should be, etc. Just things to consider is what I think I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, so Fred's come back with the supplementary question there. Do the police know the law? Most of them actually do. And there is a police unit. Dave Phipps, our chief exec, has regular meetings with the chief constables about drones, ensuring that they're up to speed. So there will be some that get it wrong. So you're highly unlikely to have your drone confiscated, and if police have got it wrong, you will get it back. if they've got it right, you probably deserve to have it confiscated.
I mean, Andy, I think, in every walk of life, whatever we do, there's jobs worths, and you get that as well, and you get people who just think they know something, whether it's the law or not.
Absolutely.
I can give you some quite, what I think are quite useful pointers that I've been sharing to a few people recently. With the police, I think that they're getting much, much better at knowing the law. But the thing you have to remember is they've got to learn and understand thousands of laws, whereas we're just thinking about one drone law. So the thing that I would advise is, if you ever get approached by the police, the first thing is to be very polite, be very cooperative, do whatever they ask you to do. If they ask you to land so they can talk to you, do as you're asked, land. But also things like the flyer ID. If you take the A1 open category, you only need the operator ID by law to fly in the A1 open category. But having the flyer ID is useful because A, you're going to have learned some really useful knowledge and information by doing the test. But when you do get stopped by a police officer in the street who's aware that you need an operator ID and is aware of a flyer ID, it just helps. If they don't know that you don't need the flyer ID for the A1, they can just go, well, this person has an operator ID and a flyer ID, so I've done my job. It just makes things easier for them in that respect.
Yeah, that's it.
For the sake of taking a 10-minute online test, you've done something that just makes life easier.
Yeah.
Yourself as well, Ben.
Yeah, I think we have to remember that the police, believe it or not, are also human, and they do make the odd mistake. It's, as we all do. So
get us. They're certainly not out to pick on us.
No, absolutely. I agree completely. Yeah. So,
I think one of the things that we have to do, and I'm just reading some of the questions, and by all means, Andy will probably answer some of these, but I think we have to work with these guys as best that we can, and ladies, rather than trying to work around them, go work a different way and try and be clever about it. My experience, any model flying, whether a model gets close to a road or something where it shouldn't do anything like that, if you're polite with somebody and you just talk to them properly, the chances are everything's just fine. But,
exactly. The way not to do it is these DJ audits and people doing that. Let's go and fly over a police station just to prove we can and have an argument with them.
Yeah, I think Lenny's made that very point in the Q&A, that there are auditors now using drones agitating police and authorities.
Yeah,
there are, and to be honest, they're idiots. I'm going to be very blunt about it. Don't share when you see these things cropping up on YouTube and Facebook. Don't share and don't view them, and because they're all they're after is views, because it gives them a little bit of money. So don't share them, don't view them. Let's try and starve them of oxygen, and they might just go away and not start annoying everybody. That's.
I've put drones up in some very unusual places for various different people, and whenever I'm confronted, the quickest way to defuse it is to just be polite, tell them what you're doing, why you're doing it, and if you get asked to move on, just move on.
Yeah,
yeah.
Not that I've not experienced that at all yet, though. I've only had positive.
Never been asked to move on after being polite. If you've had that conversation, you've told them what you're doing and why you're doing it. I think I've always told that anecdote when we were flying in Cornwall for Betty, the Discovery Channel. We were flying one of these big drones over a house. Every house had been pre-notified, but someone obviously hadn't told their wife, and she came out hissing blood, basically, effing and blinding at us because, there's a 15 kilo making a racket flying close over our house. So I just went down and we landed the drone. I went down and I introduced myself as the manager. I told her what we were doing, why we were doing it. We had notified everybody. Really sorry if you hadn't. And she went from spitting venom to coming back 5 minutes later with a tray of biscuits and asking if we wanted tea and coffee.
Were they decent biscuits? That's the question.
Oh, hobnobs and bourbons.
Very good then. Yeah. Very dunkable biscuits.
Andy, you would have pressed for donuts on that, I know. But anyway.
well, yeah, have a little bacon butties.
To be fair, we were in Cornwall, so we should have had some.
Yeah, cream then jam, or jam then cream. That's the question.
Just another
kindness quicker than anything else.
Yeah, just another example where when we fly near people, around people, and things like that in houses, we carry out what's called a PIA, Privacy Impact Assessment, and we tend to give that to the owner of the building, if it's a landlord of a building or something like that, and that sets out what we are shooting, why are we shooting it. If we capture people who through people's windows and things like that. What we do with the footage, who sees the footage, and etc. etc. Usually we're doing building inspections. So, you know, shooting a tower block of flats and things like that. You're going to capture all sorts of things inside there. And before we give that information to our client, then anything we see inside people's windows, we blank out. So we don't even pass that information on to our clients. Before our clients get it, everything's been actually numbed out. But I said we use what's called a PIA, a privacy impact assessment form, which I mean, I made one up years ago, but you can get something off the internet now, a typical form like that. But that's only if you're going to be flying and possibly capturing people who don't know you're there and don't want you to be there, and that's what we use that for.
It's, when we do TV filming and we're close proximity again, we have to get visual disclaimers done because it's GDPR. You've got someone's face that can recognise and identify them, and if it's going to be used, if you're videoing with even with your Mini 2 and you're close to somebody 5-6 meters away and you can recognise a face very clearly to identify them, think twice about putting that part of the video on YouTube. You know, edit that part out, redact it, delete that section before you upload it. You know, just think from your own perspective, would you want your face put on somebody else's video if you didn't know they were there or you didn't know what they were doing? Probably not. You know,
it's all about being considerate, isn't it?
Do unto others as you would undo unto yourself, and all that rubbish, whatever it is.
That's the word. That's the phrase.
Just before we get to the, we're obviously just sort of getting on a bit. I'm quite happy to let you guys to keep rattling on, but Barry and I just want to just make a couple of very quick announcements for the next few months. We're gonna hopefully have another session in a couple of weeks' time, which I'm just trying to sort with Simon V at the moment, which will hopefully be an update on the record attempt that many of you and the clubs entered into over the other weekend, the June weekend, first week in June, I think it was. So we're just trying to get in touch with Simon and see whether he wants to do it. He was going to look to do that. And then Barry and I have both got a couple of sessions. Chris Bradbury's actually proving to us that you can do it live on a mobile phone. I'm not sure it's a mobile phone. He's probably got a cam going there or something. But anyway, he's got something working. Barry's going to be in America at Muncie at the National American Centre in early July, and then I'm in Croatia for a World Cup event, and we're both going to. So it's an indoor duration event for me, and we're both going to be doing some live in the air tonight sessions there. So we've got some things coming up, but generally throughout the summer we're going to keep it relatively quiet. Most of us are out flying, or we want to be out flying, so hopefully you'll persevere with us. But that's the last of the advertisements. Barry, do you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I think that it's the World Pylon Racing Championships that I'm going to. I'm the chairman of the jury, and that's been held at Muncie, Indiana, the AMA site. And on Tuesday, the 12th of July, we're planning to do an ITAT from their time. So that'll put me round about mid-afternoon. I should be able to do that. It's certainly a great venue, and the museum will be interesting as well. So yeah, that's good. And you're going to do something similar from the World Cup in Croatia. Yeah,
I've got a portable gimbal set up ready, and for my iPhone and connections. So yeah, we're going to do something from Croatia just to mix it up a bit and introduce people to different things. So
one thing I would like to say to the drone community, if you've got ideas that you would like for a drone talk from In the Air Tonight, do let me know, Chris at bmfa.org, because I'm sure I can sort something out.
Fred's put one up in the questions and answers. Actually, it's something that, while we've got Chris on board, will there be any types of masterclass meets to learn more on the camera video settings to get the best from our drones and investment?
Yeah, definitely. We need to do some more. We used to do a British Drone Flyers event, didn't we, at Buckminster? We had a couple, and then obviously the winter kicked in and it all went to pot.
We've done intro to drone days at Buckminster. So we will be doing a few more of those through the summer. But also, we can do that sort of thing potentially on a more local level, because we realise it's a bit of a trek for people, and obviously with the cost of liquid gold to put in your car these days.
We can have a test offline. Last time I tried to do screen sharing from my laptop to do some Photoshop editing and stuff like that. It just crashed my Zoom connection. So if we can work that out.
I'd quite like to try the live streaming from the drone to Facebook. I don't know whether, if we could live stream the actual screen rather than the camera view, it might be a good way of covering some of the camera settings. It's something to have a look at from a technical point of view. It'd be an interesting challenge, I would imagine, but it's something we can certainly look at.
I feed from the drone out via HDMI, which I can do into a laptop. Then we can share it from a laptop.
Yeah. So it's an interesting one. Yeah.
But, gentlemen, I'm gonna call it an evening, because I've hopefully got my barbecue ready, and I'm gonna go and eat some burgers. But I just want to thank everybody. Adrian, you've already started.
I've already started.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Adrian, for coming on rather impromptu like that. And Chris, I know you've had a busy day at Buckminster. And Kevin,
Andy, I'm going to go as well, but I'll see you tomorrow night at the Needle's Eye.
Yes, if anybody's near Wentworth, not far from Rotherham, the Needle's Eye, we're having a Yorkshire Drone Flyers meet there tomorrow evening. So if anybody wants to come along at 7 o'clock, by all means, you will be more than welcome. So that's the Needle's Eye at Wentworth near Rotherham.
Brilliant.
If you look on the Yorkshire Drone Flyers website, you'll find information for that.
Oh, bless you, Chris.
Bless you, Chris.
Yeah.
Right, let's say good night to those on that have been watching on YouTube.